Welcome back to another episode of Pass the Balance Sheet. There's a phrase we hear from business owners more than almost anything else. I feel like I should be further along, more profitable, more confident, more settled. After a season of conversations about cash flow, payroll, growth, decisions, and leadership, we want to pause here and say this clearly. If you feel behind, it doesn't mean you're failing. It usually means you're in the messy middle, the part of business that doesn't get talked about because it doesn't fit neatly into a success story. Today, we're talking about that middle and why being there is often a sign that you're actually doing the work. Let's dig in. All right, welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that we should celebrate a little bit because I don't know if you know, but this is episode 12. I feel like it's kind of like a little year.
I know, a full dozen completed.
I
Um,
know.
when we were initially not kind of knowing, is this gonna be a season thing? Is this like, how is this gonna look? When I was thinking seasons, I was thinking like, yeah, probably each season would be about a dozen. So I kind of feel like we've got a mini season in, even though we're ongoing.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking to myself, like, I when I opened up our notes, I'm like, how many have we actually done? And I had in my head, like, I would say something at 10, like, we've made it through 10.
Hmm.
But when we were talking about doing this, one of the things that we talked about, and a lot of the feedback that I got was, the first few episodes, even the first, I don't know, 20 or so, you're probably gonna get very low listenership and
Hmm.
real significance, real metrics really aren't measured until after 20, and most people don't make it to 20 because of, um the what's the word that I'm thinking of? The discouragement of no one's
Hmm.
listening, no one cares,
Hmm.
but like anything, it takes time. And so, you and I kind of agreed from the beginning that we would at least get to 20 before we made any decisions of going one way or another. And I don't know about you, but I'm having so much fun that this
Yeah,
was
I
never
have no
about
plans of
monetary
stopping.
value.
Exactly. Yes, we put this project together because we both wanted to do it for such a long time, and if it allows us to promote our brands, that's a plus. If there's anything monetary, if we have viewership, like that is such a plus. But it really is just two passionate girls talking shop and having an excuse to meet once a week.
I think that's the biggest thing in all of this. And, we've talked about this so much that, we met unexpectedly, a little unconventionally, but I consider you one of my dear friends, and
Same here.
I'm just I'm always refreshed and excited before we get to, I wake up this morning just like a little giddy child on Christmas morning. Like I get to record with my friend and I get to catch up on what's going on in her life. And afterwards, there's certain things in life that we all have to do that, just when we're done, we're like, I'm so glad I'm done with that.
Mhm.
But I have not walked away from any of our recordings and thought that I've only walked away like so refreshed and excited about what's next.
Wanting
And,
to do more,
I
yep.
told my husband that when this feels like a chore, I really need to like internalize if I'm
Yeah,
if I'm still doing it for the right reasons,
yep.
and if it's something that I should still be doing. But um at this point, I kind of really don't care if people are listening. I really hope people are listening and getting good stuff out of it. But it's really fun, and it's really fun when you get to do something with someone that you really care about and have fun with. So
Totally. Yep. Same here. And my husband has not yet gotten to our switcheroo of us being more conversational. So I'm still getting a little bit of feedback about needing to pivot some of our beginning parts. And I'm like, you have to get to. I think it's
you have to get
episode
there.
7 where we
Yeah,
kind of
I
switched
think
gears
so.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, I just hope we kind of continue getting better with time, and hopefully our listeners don't judge us for the the milestone stones in between.
Yeah, we love it. We love it. Well, today we get to talk about something that everyone goes through, whether it's in business or personal life. It's really the messy middle. And Eh, I would say just the messiness, not even the middleness, just like the messiness of business, because you can be a startup and be in a messy season. You can be very tenured, very experienced, mature company and be somewhat in a messy middle. So I think the first thing that I just want to start with is that it doesn't really matter where you are, middle, beginning, end, seasons. There's just a messiness. So we're going to try to bring some normalcy around it and kind of our experiences in some of these messy seasons. But one thing that I'll start with is growth. I've worked with some very large companies and I get to work with some of these scaling companies and they're in this season of what worked at, $1 million or what worked at year 2 doesn't work at $5 million or
Mhm.
year 10. And so they're playing this weird game of changing the systems and changing their playbooks to match kind of where they are. And you might get a little kick out of this, but some business owners, and I am no different, I have had my fair share of seasons where I kind of have to go through like, even if people tell me, I have to go through the mess a little bit myself. And then
Mhm.
on the other side, allow them to say, I told you so. I think
Mhm.
there's some learning in that. And you just sometimes you have to experience it. And so I
Mhm.
have a client, they operate in QuickBooks and they're not a finance person and they have been very open and no ego amigo with the fact that they are not a finance person, but they understand. Like if you give them a P&L, if you give them a balance sheet, they understand how to read it. They understand what's there. They can interpret the numbers pretty well. But
Mhm.
they work on cash basis, which
Mhm.
works for them. Um, they're working on a possible M&A, and so accrual is really coming into the picture because most investors really want a
Mhm.
accrual
Yep.
basis picture. And it's pretty simple for what they're doing to do that, but their billing is set up on sales receipts, and so they don't have
Mhm.
an AR.
Yep.
So what happens for listeners out there in a sales receipt, it basically is like an instantaneous transaction. That's really what they're used for. If you were to come to me and you guys now know that I do sourdough bread. So if you were to come to me, buy a loaf of sourdough bread, I can run your credit card through a sales receipt. It will charge you right then and there and send you a receipt. That's really kind of the idea of a sales receipt in QuickBooks for an instantaneous transaction.
Mhm.
There's no AR attached because you're
Yep.
getting the funds right when the services or product is rendered. What they have done is they have created a reoccurring sales receipt, and
Mm.
so it just charges every month. And one of the things that I found, I came in as their fractional CFO. One of the things that I found was that the cash the cash coming into the business every month did not match the reoccurring monthly revenue. And so
Mhm.
when I started to dig, what I found was some of these sales receipts were saying they had gone through,
Mhm.
but on the merchant side, the credit card really wasn't charged. And
Mhm.
so it there was a lot of digging to figure out who had paid, who had not. In QuickBooks Merchant Service, if you charge 4 customers today, at the end of the night, it will batch it for 1 deposit into your account. And so when you look at that deposit, it's not easily delineated to 1 customer. You kind of have to go to the back end and see what transactions are included in this deposit. And so when I first came to them, one of my recommendations from the jump was we really need to move to an invoicing system. We can do reoccurring invoices. You can attach automatic payments to them if that's kind of how your business model is designed. Um, but then we can reconcile accounts receivables instead of trying to play this game of sales receipts that came in, cash that came in, and then trying to go find the Easter egg, if you will. And they were a little bit against that at first because it was a change and didn't pressure them, just kind of gave them the pros and cons of if we don't do this, these are the challenges you're going to experience. And if you do this, these are the benefits and other challenges you may experience. And just this week, we had an instance where they needed to alter the sales receipt that had already been processed for something for the customer. They had some internal stuff that they needed, some line items on two separate receipts. And so we went in and we created basically a duplicate and then just did a PDF print
Mhm.
and then we deleted it. Well, for some reason, QuickBooks, as soon as we created that duplicate, said you're okay to charge them. And it was a fairly large receipt.
Mhm.
But what I had also found in that was we did a sales receipt January. There was a payment and a deposit recorded in their account. And then in February, we did a sales receipt. There was no deposit, no payment. And in March, we did a sales receipt. There was no deposit, no payment. And so I brought this to their attention. Hey, we need to do some investigation on this because it looks like on our site it's showing that they were charged in February and March, but it doesn't look like anything was actually deposited. So we need to make
Mhm.
sure that it's not sitting somewhere.
Mhm.
And all of this happened within kind of a week situation. And what we found was when we went in to do that kind of phantom sales receipt for their internal processes, it charged them, but
Mhm.
February and March were not charged.
Mhm.
And so this kind of created, I mean, the client was very understanding of the situation, but it created that moment of, okay, we can no longer do this anymore. Like
Mhm.
cash, let's go to an invoicing AR
Yeah.
situation to have this clear. But it kind of solidifies my point and sometimes and it's totally okay. Sometimes you have to go through the pain of it and learn those lessons. And, this sales receipt system worked for them when they were
Mhm.
much smaller. And now they are in multiple states spread across the nation. They're working with some very large names that are familiar to probably many of our listeners. And the
Mhm.
sales receipt process doesn't work anymore, and
Mhm.
they had to unfortunately go through that. So, um, all that to say that, how your business started or processes, systems that you put into place, they're not concrete. They're very fluid
Right.
and they have to be able to bend and flex with where the business goes and the changes that the business makes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and sometimes we touched on this in a prior episode where sometimes you have to make a certain decisions because you have limited staff and you're like, well, it works for us with the resources at hand. These are our processes. But then when we're scaling, these processes no longer work. Now there's a conflict of interest with like internal controls or, if you
Mhm.
continue on the same path. So, you absolutely have to kind of assess the situation, and you definitely do stumble upon a little bit of a messy middle, if you will, when you are
Mhm.
scaling and when you're pivoting your business, when your business is changing. I wanted to touch on just kind of the I guess the fear that or maybe lack of confidence that that some business owners encounter with like, hey, we've done this for this long but it's no longer working, what do we do now, how do we pivot? And I just want to kind of bring a level of comfort to business owners that or I guess let them in on a little secret. Like, um, not to say that none of us know what the heck we're doing, but we are that's a little too extreme. But the point is like there is no one set um recipe or manual of how to run your business. Each
Mhm.
business is so different. And even though there are definitely certain hard, concrete concepts, there's the fundamentals of accounting, there's certain rules with the economics, how things interrelate. Like there are certain truths that are will just be black and white, but how you apply certain workflows, certain like how you build your business, it all depends on like what's your goal of the business? What are you trying to accomplish? And you don't have to know it all yourself.
Mhm.
A big part of being successful and knowing how to navigate that messiness is being able to recognize that you're no longer in control and you need some help. And this is where you and I talk about this constantly.
Mhm.
A good, strong business leader acknowledges where their strengths are, and follows them, and really lets the people who lets other people shine with their talents. And so, with if you hire a CFO, no two CFOs are the same. No two right no any people
Case
are
in point.
yes, yes, even you and I are very, very different. But you just have to find the person who possesses certain skills, and those skills are like being able to see different environments and seeing understanding their needs and knowing how to apply that basic knowledge to fit
Mhm.
their specific needs, and allow them to build this manual, if you will. We touch also in several episodes about the importance of SOPs. So once you do find that person or that set of people, that team who can identify this is a new path we must take, and this is how you get to build that new recipe and document it so it can be repeated in this new environment in a higher scale or whatever. But you don't just start out, like, oh, I started a business, or oh, now we're in the growth phase. So everything is
Mhm.
different now, and here's how it is. You have to stumble upon the messiness to know how to navigate what's our new way of navigating out of that messiness.
Absolutely. There's a visual of, successful businesses don't go straight up, right?
Mhm.
They have these downs, but as you look at the downs, they're going up, right? It's
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
still upward momentum, but
Mhm.
um from my perspective, because I do a lot of consulting, so
Mhm.
I'm coming in as an unbiased, and um you and I have laughed about this, that when people hire me, and even when I hire people, I'm not hiring them to be my friend. I'm hiring them to consult on things that
Yep.
probably I don't want to hear. We talked about that in the last episode.
Mhm.
But same for me. When people are hiring me, they're not hiring me to be their friend. They're hiring me to deliver information. And I think from my perspective, there's a couple components. Excuse me. How I deliver that information, but also making sure that I'm delivering information that is valuable to who I'm working with. And so,
Yes.
I've talked before that I do monthly calls with all of my clients, and all of those calls look different. And the
Mhm.
information that I'm relaying down is different. And in my intro calls, a question that I ask every single potential client is, what are your pain points and what are your goals in working with me or some sort of firm?
Mhm. Mhm.
And you usually get kind of the meat and potatoes. Like, we need to have better gross margins. We need to know why our gross margins are low, or we need to know why we are so profitable but cash is tight. And so you start to create that custom plan in, when
Mhm.
I go to this business, you know, telling them um that their net margin is not sustainable, is not helpful to them, because that's not what they're focused on. They're focused on, why is cash tight, but I have all these assets. And so you also have to understand who you're working with and what
Mhm.
their mess, quote unquote,
Yes.
is.
Mhm.
And you build rapport in that way with them in whatever and that could be in the consulting side of things. That could be if you're an employee within a business.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily get to say, like, you didn't hire me to be your best friend, but you know when marketing comes to you, if you hired them, like, those should be interview questions from the person looking to be hired in. Like, what are your goals in me coming in? What are you trying to accomplish? What are
Mhm.
your 3, 6, 9, 12 month goals? And when you come to those meetings or one-on-ones or board tables, you need to relay the information that is meaningful to them.
Right.
And I have another example on this. I work with they're subcontractors, And they do very good at what they do. They cash account on the receivable side and they accrual account on the payable side.
Mm,
And so when I give them, and I learned this about 2 months ago, when I gave them an overview at the end of the month,
mhm,
they called me and said, "I don't know what you just told me, it was meaningless to me." And I had spent probably 2 hours putting it together. And I actually just met with them um early last week, and their monthly call is actually the last or second to last day of the month
mhm.
because they're making their decisions then. They don't need a close to make their decisions because a lot of it
Uh-huh.
is based on cash. And so what they're
Mhm,
worried about is we have really floated the business on the credit card this month. We can pay it off. Does it make sense to pay it off? And
mhm,
what can I distribute as dividends this month
mhm,
to the owners? And so their monthly call looks so much different than my $5 million business over here
mhm.
because their needs and what's important to them are so different. So,
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point you make. And it's true on both ends. Like, as business owners, Cash made a point about each business being so different and operating in a different way, having different goals. And so, as a business, you should definitely understand what yours are, and be very careful about comparing yourself with other businesses that like might be in your industry but might have different goals than you. And so understanding that from whether you are the owner of the business or if you're a CFO coming in and this business is your client, really understanding what are their goals. I had a client once who they had a decent business in the like promo swag kind of
mhm,
industry, and but they were not it was never their interest to compete with the big wigs, to even try to match their margins, to like there were no big plans for growth, for expand. Like, I came in with such different expectations of what I would be doing for them, but what I found out is they're like, no, like we're very simple. We have these specific tax strategy that we want to maintain. We want to pay as little taxes as possible, but we want to take, this many vacations per year, be
mhm,
able to write off a certain point, do this, accomplish that, and have this much cash in our bank account and not much more than that. And so I had
mhm,
a very different way of working with them, and my goals were different for them. My whole, structure, my our to your point, what's the plan for the first 90 days, for like where we in 6 months. All of that looked very, very different than me working with a swag company that is trying to be
mhm.
the top five or whatever
Yep.
in the nation. Or so, do you have any examples that you can bring to the table of whether whichever angle it's from, of a business comparing themselves to trying to fit different shoes that don't really fit their own goals
Mhm.
or needs?
Yeah. One of the questions that I ask in my intro to businesses is what are your goals? If I was to
Mhm.
come across your business in 5 or 10 years, what does that look like to you? And that usually
Mhm.
tells me what they want to do, whether they want to be,
Yeah.
one of the big 4 or, they're just trying to float by.
Yeah.
And once they share that, my next question is, why is that your goal? And
Mhm.
that's where you get to the personal side of things. And like you said, like, well, we want to get to a merger and acquisition, or we want to get to just a place where we can live the lifestyle we want to live, be available when we need to, be free when we want to be.
Mhm.
Um, but comparison, I usually try to shut it down because I do hear like I wanna be like Joe Schmo over here, whatever. What I find in that is if that's your goal and you don't have a why behind it, you're chasing the wrong thing, right? Because you
Mhm.
don't know what the the inner workings of their business are. You know, you and I do similar things, and if you were to have your own firm, the culture within your firm is going to be different than the culture within my firm. The types of clients you want to work with are different than the types of clients that I want to work with. And so for me, I try to shut the comparison down just because no two businesses, I don't care if you're in the same industry, are
Mhm.
not identical because of the inner workings of the business. And when you are so focused on comparing or competing identically with them,
Mhm.
your focus shifts into a place that it shouldn't. And so when you
Yeah.
shift to that, you're so focused on, I need to be like Sassy over here, which really limits my ability to be Cash and Outgrow over here and be really
Mhm.
good at what I'm at because I'm so hyper focused on what's going on over here. So I think, I'm a very competitive person. I mean, we've talked about my sports and my background and just naturally am competitive, but there's healthy competition and there's unhealthy competition.
Yeah.
And when your driver is solely to compete with business B,
Mhm.
you're actually becoming a liability to your own business and to your own
Mhm.
success. And so I don't know if that
Huh.
totally answers your question, but
Yeah.
when I hear it come up, I try to diffuse it or pivot the conversation into a way to focus on something that would actually propel the business forward.
Yeah. No, that absolutely answers it, and I think that's a great, way to you want to discourage direct comparison, but like knowing an industrial baseline is always good. Like
Mhm.
I have a client who is in the insulation industry, and understanding where, like we have we're constantly discussing margins and
Mhm.
improving margins, and it's the repeated point of conversation, and understanding the baseline of the industry is so important, even if we're not like to really understand, like, are we healthy? Should we be striving, like, is it realistic to inch it up more? And what I found out
Mhm.
about this industry is like they're all on really, really thin margins. And
Mhm.
so volume is like, that's the key there, is you want to make up the margin to fit your overhead and bring some sort of profitability with really the volume. And so there isn't a lot of padding in a lot of their jobs. They have different kinds of jobs, and so they're smart, so they diversify, and they're like, okay, we know that these are low margin, but we know we can't get this much revenue in the slow season, so we're going to make it up here in a little bit more of a lucrative type of job. Doesn't happen very often, but if we can swing this kind to make up for, so but so understanding that baseline is very important, because I initially going into this was thinking that they're like very, very unhealthy, and that something is like wrong with them specifically. But then when I learned, like,
Mhm.
oh no, this is the struggle of they have to stay competitive, they have to stay within the market, they can't hike up their prices too much because they won't be competitive anymore. And so kind of understanding that baseline, but also knowing how you can pivot away from it, what sort of wiggle room you have, and
Mhm.
what is the business goal, will kind of help you ultimately um, get to the right place.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really don't have much to add on that. I mean, competition in itself, it's why you see some of these businesses be so successful because they are they are competing in a healthy way. And you can look at the auto industry. We don't talk a lot about the auto industry, but
Yeah.
when you look at the auto industry, when you look at Toyota, Ford, Honda, Chevrolet, I don't know, all of them. They're looking at what's going on. What
Mhm.
Chevy's looking at, like, what is Toyota doing over there? Like,
Mhm.
how can we
Mhm.
compete? What bells and whistles do they have? And vice versa. And they're doing it in a way that is propelling the business, but they're not hyper focused on like, well, we're just going to stop producing to really figure out what's going on over here. I
Mhm.
would say the other point to mention in that is that they have a lot of resources. And so,
Yeah.
they do have a product development team that is spending a lot of time, researching, investigating, and understanding what's going on over here. But that can be said in any business, small or big. And if competition is what is important to you, really understanding what the competition is. For me, the competition is with myself, right? Like, I had a plan of what I wanted the business to be like at this juncture, and where I wanted it to be at the certain points within the first 3 to 5 years. And my competition with myself is, when I get to that point, am I actually operating in the way that is healthy for the business, and in a
Mhm.
way that can scale? And am I operating in a way that I would be proud if someone walked in and looked at, my
Yeah.
operating manual and playbook,
Mhm.
and could see the culture that we've created? Would it be something that I'm proud of? And that is where my competition comes from. There's
Yeah.
plenty of accounting firms. They all have different value adds than I do, and their goals are very different. Some of them want to be competing with the big four, and some
Mhm.
of them want to just give their family the life that they think that they deserve and want. And so if I spent my time competing with the people that
Mhm.
want to be competing with Big Four, I would be wasting my energy and resources, because I don't want to be a Big Four firm.
Yeah. Yeah, I know knowing you as a person, I know you're more about, making lives for a set of people that you can influence and enjoy
Hmm.
what you're doing. So completely different goals than, yeah, of some big fours or other organizations. I want to touch a little bit on kind of we're talking about messy middle and some uncertainty that comes with it. And one experience that I had was with a nonprofit. And, as we know, like nonprofits are already such a struggle to keep alive from year to year in
Hmm.
general, because they really
Yep.
rely on the goodness of other people. And so I do remember having basically we had to pivot one year where grants started the grant giving landscape completely changed. We couldn't rely on that anymore and needed to like really pivot to a different direction. And I remember certain board members coming to me with like just the question of like, has this organization run out of like like is has its life expired type of thing? Like, did it
Hmm.
live its full course and it's time to like close the doors? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Because, number one, we have these two other areas to pivot into for revenues. And they're unfortunately a lot harder. Like, it's, well, for me, because I hate asking people for money. So, like, don't put me in that position. I did not do any justice as a board member in that respect. Like, because I just it makes me super uncomfortable and I don't like to ask people for money. So
Hmm.
um but in any case, if from my seat where I was sitting, I was looking at historical data. I'm looking, and this conversation came also at like the driest season, like we were running low on cash and blah blah blah. But I'm like, no, if we look at historically, we've been around for 6 years. This is
Hmm.
always a dry time. Like, let's look at cyclicity. This is a repeating thing. We have been in the same cash position at these points in our history. This is how we came out of them. It wasn't even grants that made it up. It was like certain events that made it up in this part of the season. And so I was able to, I saw a little bit more being so connected to the financials. I'm not just looking at one place in time, one point in time, and making a decision off of it. Making it based on the full picture, the history, and also knowing that we have these other areas that we just need to develop. We've relied heavily on grants, but now we're going to do more events. Now we're going to focus more on that that corporate sponsorship, that private, the large grant, the personal grants. We're gonna focus a little bit on a different target market here. And um, so I wanted to ask you, have you had any experiences where like the business is just like, oh my God, we've stumbled upon our very first hardship where we're like, we don't know where funds will come from in this next year. And, these uncertainties where they feel like they have to stop. Or have you experienced anything in your business as you're growing? Because you've been around for 6 months, but you haven't seen the full scope of
Mhm.
like, what does cyclicity look like? When are people asking for to get migrated? When are they not asking for things like, oh, what has that looked like in your
Yeah.
in your new business?
That's a good question. And we have talked about this. Like every business, every industry has has a year with seasons
Mhm.
in it. That
Mhm.
year looks different. It could be 6 months. It could be actually a full year. Um, we certainly have identified it within my husband's business, which is in the auto industry,
Mhm.
and I've spoken on that a little bit. And
Yep.
we make decisions around that. We have enough data to show that it wasn't just one year; it is now actually a pattern. Within my business, I think that timing. I'm a true believer in timing. Things happen when they're meant to happen, and it's not always the timing that we prefer, that we would like, but being on the outside looking into my business, most businesses have this panic in Q1, right? For books.
Mhm.
And that is related to the tax side of things. And I do want to have
Mhm.
an episode where we lean into tax. Both Sassy and I are not CPAs. We chose not to. We don't need to be CPAs to do what we choose to do.
Yep.
And I actually have a pretty firm belief that your day to day person and your tax person should be two different people
I agree with
within
that too.
two different organizations because they're
Yep.
looking at things from a very different lens
Mhm.
and they're looking for different outcomes. Your tax
Yes.
person is looking for a low liability and what you pay to the IRS, and your day-to-day CFO is looking for maximum profitability, and that becomes very important in a small business because, we're people and we want to buy homes and we want to invest in things, and those investments really come from our tax return. And so if you get
Mhm.
very aggressive with tax, you may bite yourself when you want to do investments. So I do want to do a whole
Mhm.
episode on that. But I opened the firm in November, and year end is really, it was a good opportunity for me because I had the time to build kind of the framework, build the website, hone the website, really hone how I wanted to interact with people, what that onboarding looked like,
Mhm.
really research my competitors and cost and make decisions on, do I want to undercut and be the low cost leader, or do I really pitch the value add? And so I do think that for me, every year, that end of year is going to be a little bit of a reflection and repivot point.
Mhm.
And Q1 is really going to be where I see an influx of clientele really centered around cleanup for your CPA. Q2 is very interesting, and I think it's very similar in most businesses that it starts to quiet down.
Mhm.
I mean, there's other stuff that's going on. We're really analyzing budgets, really analyzing forecasts, but in my history, in my career, Q2 is really a quiet time for us to kind of catch up on all the things that we have just come out of, year
Mhm.
end, tax prep, etc. And so knowing that, I know that I'm probably not going to acquire a lot of clients in
Mhm.
in Q2. So it's another opportunity for me to kind of reflect on what can we do better, how do we maybe enter new marketing or advertising avenues.
Mhm.
And then Q3 is going to be interesting because I think that Q3 is that push before the end of the year on,
Yeah.
this is where business owners are starting to have those conversations on, do we do the software implementation now because we need to lower some tax liability,
Mhm.
or we have some downtime. we're kind of in that calm before the storm of we have
Yeah.
time to do that. And so really long answer to your question, but I think for my business, Q1 and Q3 are going to be high volume quarters where
Mhm.
it's just going to be running myself into the pavement, really having to steward my team and understanding and conveying to them that these are really hard quarters and we get some rest and reprieve in the next quarters. And
Mhm.
Q2 and Q4 are going to be kind of those calmer um reflection points,
Yeah.
abilities to pivot, ability to
Mhm.
really, like I said, steward the team, give them some R&R before we do
Mhm.
it again. So I
Yeah.
haven't gone through a full cycle, but this is kind of what I'm anticipating.
Mhm. Mhm. Gotcha. Yeah, and I was gonna say another thing is there's things that you don't know yet what your
Mhm.
messy mess is gonna be. I don't even want to say middle because it's still the beginning stages, but I just like me, it seems like you embrace the mess because this is our opportunities to learn. This is where when we stumble upon like, oh, this is a thing. Okay, good to be aware of it. Is it going to repeat? Okay, how do we work around it? So I usually embrace unless it's like a fire that has irreversible kind of damage, which there are those kinds of fires,
Mhm.
but I typically embrace like the challenges, oh, didn't see this coming. Well, great. Now this is an opportunity to think about it and build a workflow around it. So I do tend to embrace the mess, but there are certain points where some businesses are going through several mess piles at once, and
Mhm.
this is where I have such deep empathy, and I've seen some challenges of trying to work around the messy middle when you're solving several problems at once, and during the solving of this you might have some turnover, unexpected turnover that happens here, and so now you're solving
Mhm.
two problems, and so the mess, and it comes in different shapes and sizes, and
Mhm.
you gotta embrace it, and then you just gotta be prepared. Sometimes you don't see it coming. Sometimes you need an extra helping hand. This is where reaching out to a fractional business or an expert in your type of
Mhm.
fire is a good idea. You're never alone in these things, but yeah, sometimes the fires all come at once.
They do, they do. But I fully agree with you in the fact that I do embrace and I think I've talked about this a little bit and like celebrations and accomplishments are exciting. They certainly are worth celebrating. But when I look back on my career, when I look back on what I learned, it really
Mhm.
wasn't in the accomplishments. Like
Mhm.
when I was appointed CFO for the first time, it was great. We went out to a fancy dinner. We had some delightful wine. And the next day it was business as usual. I didn't learn anything in that process, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
If I guess if anything, I learned that I really needed to be humble because there was a lot of PR that came around it,
Mhm.
and you can really let that go to your head. But what I really learned about myself, about business. We're in the mistakes, we're in the messiness because you really have to sit in them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to reflect on them and I talked about the website in the last episode, but I
Mhm.
have a novel of those situations that they come to you and you're like, "All right, well, that was a complete shit sandwich. Now, how do we make sure that the next time it's actually a really good peanut butter and jelly sandwich?" And it's
Absolutely.
really reflecting through that. And I would say the other piece of that is, and this is something that I had to learn the hard way. And if I could give any advice to business leaders, don't learn this lesson the hard way. Is the people that I surround myself with are so much more smarter than me. They're significantly better people than
Mm.
me. And their voices at the table matter more than mine. And so when we go through this messy middle, or we go through these piles of trash, if you will, it is so important to me to bring my team along and ask
Mhm.
what went wrong for you,
Mhm.
how could it have been avoided, what could we have done to get through it more efficiently,
Mhm.
really taking into account their opinions, and can they be implemented? Not always, but it helps me understand how we then alter the process, um, or redefine the process with
Mhm.
their thoughts and opinions in mind. And when you do that, I would say this was the biggest lesson I learned. When you do that, even if you do not use their opinions, their advice, you have their full buy-in. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can think of so many situations where I just simply asked, "What would have made this shit sandwich more delightful to you?"
Mhm.
And I didn't use any of their advice. I didn't use any of their feedback or opinions. But when the decision was made and we moved in that direction, the pivot, if you will, they were fully in my corner, and they were fully aligned with what we were
Mhm.
doing and the pivot we were making, because
Mhm.
they felt like they were a part of the process and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
their voice mattered. And so, um, I would say that, these messy middles, these shit sandwiches, if you will, they're not just yours. They're
Such a
everyone
legit point.
around you's problem too.
Such a legit point and really ties into our earlier conversation about engaging your team, trusting your team to be a part of this process with you and a part of that solution. And definitely as business owners, any business owners who are listening here, you absolutely want to trust you can't make the decisions on your own, especially without any buy-in from the people who will actually be in the day to day with with
Mhm.
these tools or the people that you've decided to sick on them. So
Mhm.
absolutely, that collaborative approach is absolutely key. Your employees who are closest to that mess, they will give you the best insight of what will really solve their problems and what won't. And I have seen this a lot with business owners, and so I want to kind of reach out to them. I realized the pressures and the stress that comes from being a business owner, knowing that all of your friends know you're a business owner. Now everybody's trying to sell you something. Oh, I have this new thing. I have this. And so you're getting excited because they're selling you like the elevator pitch of like, this will solve all of your problems. And
Mhm.
so you're excited. You're like, I want to empower my team. I want to give this to them. And if you don't give them any buy-in, and then they're now like, okay, what is this? And they find out that this didn't solve any problems. The sales, pitch was completely different, uh,
Mhm.
than what it is in reality. And then you've really compromised you didn't provide a solution. You now created a new problem. So I could not agree more about that collaborative approach and not trying to solve these messy problems yourself for sure.
Yep. Yep.
Well, is it time? I was going to steal it before you because I have a
No,
question for you.
you're gonna ask if we should land the plane.
Yes. I know
Yeah.
I need my own saying so I
I think
don't
it's just kind of
steal
become our
yours.
little signature of like, that's our cue. So when people start to hear it, they're like, all right, these girls are wrapping it up.
Do you have any background in planes or Air Force or anything like that
No,
that's relevant to you?
no, not really. I mean, other than the fact that I spent, 5 years living on a plane towards the end of my corporate career. Um, but my
Yes, you did
husband,
travel a lot.
when we, before it was probably early in our marriage, I'm trying to think. He kind of, so my husband is older than me. Not that doesn't mean more mature. But he's older than me. He kind of went through this, I called it a midlife crisis, but it was early for a midlife crisis. It was kind of in the time frame of me really taking off in my career
Mhm.
and I was climbing the corporate ladder rather quickly, I think not necessarily that he needed to provide, but I think that there was a subtle level of him feeling like he needed to compete with me or needed to kind of match my success for me to stay engaged.
Mhm.
Um, and he was very interested in becoming a pilot. And
Wow.
I
Mhm.
kind of supported the dream for for the beginning process, but it just ultimately didn't work out, so, no, I don't have really anything tied to planes or
Gotcha.
aviation other than AJ kind of had a dream to be a pilot.
Super interesting. And I'm curious, like, why that didn't work out. My husband's both of his parents, his mom and his stepdad were pilots.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna beat myself up if I think American Airlines, but they will kill me if it's not, because I butcher it every time. I just like, these names mean nothing to me. But, his mom started out, I think in the Air Force, is where she met his biological dad, but
Mhm.
then they were flying, commercially, but yeah, she has so many stories about just, navigating a man's world in a man's time, so definitely, some juicy stories for later, but,
Should have her on
um
the podcast.
yes, oh, yes, she's a delightful person and, has kind of delved in many things in her life, so yes, she would be a fantastic guest one day, but I do have a different question,
Okay.
that I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
Um, Outside of family, has there been, an old person I know it sounds so terrible, but people are old.
Mhm.
It's not a I don't mean it as a derogatory thing.
Yeah.
Has there been an old person in your life who has made a very large impact in your life outside of
That's
your
actually
family?
a good question. So I have name dropped her. I haven't name dropped her. I've person dropped her in this
Okay.
podcast. And she's actually, when me and Sassy have very different talents and the things that we're interested in. And so she does a lot of our back end work we are solopreneurs on the podcast. And so she does a lot of the back end stuff and me and my hubby do a lot of the editing. And once our episode is edited before we publish, it goes to Sassy for, her final input if there's any changes we need to make or anything like that. But I have mentioned to you, I've sent this off to, a good friend to listen to.
Mhm.
And
Yep, yep.
that good friend is Kathy. And Kathy and I met when I moved to Utah. And I have I've had two best friends in my life, and they are two still very good friends to me. I still would consider them best friends, but they're my age, and so they're going through life at kind of um the same speed. We're kind of
Yeah.
in the same seasons. It's kind of bantering like, yeah, motherhood today really sucks, or being a wife today really has its challenges. And the feedback that I get is yeah, it is. I really wanna punch my husband in the face, or, yeah, my kids barely made it to the bus because I wanted to murder them. And
Mhm.
I think it's feedback that you need in that moment to be like, "Okay, this is normal," but not always like, "What do I do with this?" Right? Other
Mhm,
than like, "Now I
mhm.
feel a little bit better about myself." But Kathy, I know she's gonna cry when she hears this, but, um, we met very unconventional this is like a theme, like, my friends and me meet very unconventionally, but we live basically on a golf course,
Mhm.
and I was going down to the golf course pretty regularly, by myself. Like, I would go play a round of golf by myself, or I'd go to the driving range by myself, and I came in from the driving range, this was a few years ago when I moved here, and one of the guys in the pro shop said, "Are you Cash?" And I said, "I don't know, who's asking?" Mm, just you could probably you can picture this. This is a total Cash personality. And he said, my wife just started playing golf and she's not great, but she doesn't have any friends out here to play golf." And I kid you not, we laugh about this now. I can't believe I'm saying this. My
Please tell me you
answer
didn't tell him to pound sand.
no, pretty much. My answer was, "Well, I'm not really in the market for friends."
Wow.
And he go you could imagine his face like, "Oh, okay. Well, this went way different than I expected it." And he said, "Well, I'm gonna give you her number. You do with it what you would like." And the intrigue got the best of me, as it always does. So, it was either that afternoon or the next morning, I texted her and was like, "Hey, I got your phone number from your husband who apparently is trying to play matchmaker. Maybe we could play a round of golf and see if this is, like, legit." And so we did. We went out one Friday morning, she met me, and I'm usually the first off of the tee, so in the this was summer. It was like, I don't know, a 5:30 AM tea time. She met me, so she got some rapport there. Because 'cause I'm like, any lady or person that's willing to get up at 5 o'clock and meet some stranger at the golf course, you get a few points. You
Yeah.
you you get some points for that. And I kid you not, for those that don't play golf, it's not just a, like, you show up for coffee and you're like, "Hey, I gotta go." Like, once you have started, you're kinda committed, and it's,
Mhm.
like, 3.5, 4 hours.
Mhm.
So, I kid you not, we laughed the entire time, and she is 25 years older than me. She's retired. She has lived her life. She's 25 years older than me, but I think that her personality is just the same age as me.
Mhm.
But I just told her actually a week ago that I've had so many friends and I have so many dear friends, and this doesn't diminish any of those friendships. But I have not ever had a friend like her that just is there unconditionally, unapologetically. On my worst days, there's not any judgments. It's how can we make you better?
Mhm.
Um, and even in business, like when I confide in her, she will certainly say, like, um, she will give the advice and like, you did what you did, but here's what I would do. And so she has been someone who I have really grown to just love and adore and has taught me what it means to be a really good friend, a really good person. And people talk all the time about certain people that make you feel a certain way or make you want to be a better
Mhm.
person. My husband
Mhm.
certainly is that person that makes me want to be a better person, but she truly is one of those people that you're just like, I want to be a better person in this world and show up
Mhm.
better because you are in my corner. So
It's
I would certainly
beautiful.
say
I
Kathy.
love it.
Love
I
you, girl.
love it. Love your story, and it's so true. I'm a little bit of an ageist in the direction of like I love older people and
Mhm,
have a really hard time like warming up to younger people, and it's really because like the younger people they still have something to prove. They're finding out like who they are.
mhm,
They're getting comfortable in their skin, and you mentioned that there's this certain level of just like honesty, calmness, and all of this good advice and goodness that she brings into your life because she is a stable person who's like now comfortable in her skin. She's been there, done that, and now she's like, "Let me
mhm,
help you. I've been there." And that's what I very value about the people who have been around longer than we have. They just give us something to look up to and strive to, which is amazing. In my experience, I have a couple of it's three people who are no longer with us, unfortunately, but they have made such an impact in my life that I just think about them so much and will continue to reflect on our friendship for until I'm old. So essentially, which arguably I am, I turned 40 last week, but I meant like old, old. Um, so for me, it was Mr. and Mrs. Ancona and Mark Cusano. They are different people. So Mrs. and Mr. and Miss Ancona, they were my choir teachers when we moved to America. They were this wonderful couple who taught all kinds of music, choir, recorders. Remember when we used to
Mhm.
have to play those damn things?
Hot cross buns?
What's that?
Hot cross buns?
Was that a song that we
On
had
the
to learn?
recorder, that's all I
I
remember
don't
is
remember
hot
that one.
cross buns, hot cross buns.
Don't know that
No?
one. I remember,
Okay.
like, We Three Kings and, like, other bullshit, but anyway, uh, I didn't enjoy the recorder too much, uh, but in any case, these 2 people and, they essentially took me and my sister in and under their wing of, like, almost, like friendship, guardianship, like everything you could possibly imagine. I think that they probably felt sorry for us because there were these 2 foreigners who like don't have any friends, don't know what the
Mhm.
heck to expect from life or anything. The only thing that like they understood about us is we love music and we played the piano back in the day, and they showed us such unconditional love. They exposed us to more music. They got us competing in like little competitions. They gave us new, very complicated music to learn because they had like really high, like they're like, you guys can learn this 16-page
Mhm.
piece or whatever, you know. And they just invested so much time and love into us. And this was, you know, when we were in the school, it was a couple of years. Then we moved away. We eventually moved away to a different state, but our friendship remained. And they would continue. They would go to Paris every summer and send us these little packages with that were wrapped with love and
Mm.
handwritten letters and everything. And that kind of just unconditional love was something that we really really needed at such a hard time in our life, going into a
Mhm.
new world, a very unaccepting world. We basically, when nobody else gave a shit about us or really had a reason to give a shit about us,
Mhm.
they showed us true love, and that has carried with me. And same with Mark Kuzana, he was a neighbor of ours, and just an old guy who was living on his own, loved golfing in
Mhm.
his hallway. He would do
Oh.
little golfs and just again unconditional love, like for no reason whatsoever. But we had the most meaningful and deep conversations, and just
Mhm.
got to know something outside of our family, and they've been a spark in my life to show random strangers that kind of compassion and that kind of love. Like, they completely shaped who I am today,
Yeah.
and I will never forget them. And I just find that in this world today, like, it's so easy to like forget that old people even exist, because like we
Mhm.
just shove them into old person homes, you know, and like
Yeah.
they're not seen, they're not heard, and we just kind of like forget about them because it's easier to. But they're such an important like membership of our society, and we would
Yep.
be nowhere without their guidance. So I'm glad that we got to spend a little bit of time to kind of
Yeah.
shine light for those people who made a difference in
I
us.
I love it, and, you said non-family, but, my mom, my husband, my dad are those people too, and I think for me, the people that are so meaningful and so impactful to me are exactly what you said. They love me with no strings attached,
Yeah,
and it's not conditional. It's just like,
yeah.
when you're a complete a-hole, they still love you and there's not any condition. But I would also say on the flip side of that, one of the things that I truly adore about her and all of the people around me is
Mm-hmm.
they don't make you feel any different about disappointment. And she's gonna
Mm-hmm.
listen and she's gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. But earlier this week we had club championship
What's
for
that?
our it was a 2-day golf
Oh, okay.
event um for our course,
Okay.
ladies only.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a whole incident, and I look back and I'm like, man, I could have handled that so much better. Um, and I know she was disappointed. Like I could tell in her voice when we
Mm-hmm.
talked after, and not once in that conversation did she need to say that she was disappointed, express it. Like she already knew and was there still, like, and those are the
Mhm.
people that mean
Mhm.
so much to me, that will love me unconditionally, will be disappointed, but don't need to throw it in my face because there's so many critics outside that are
Yeah.
willing
Yep.
to,
Yep.
to throw the shade at me. They
Mhm.
don't need to say anything. They already know. And when you disappoint the people that mean so much to you, it has a way of really impacting you.
That yes, it's their quiet way of impacting you without saying anything because like you knowing that you've disappointed them is
Mhm.
your own internal drive of like, oh, I should have handled this differently. Totally. I
Yeah.
hear you. They don't need to
Yeah.
say it. They don't yeah, I hear it.
Yeah.
And it's just so grateful that we have such special people in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, my friends, it's time to wrap this up, and
Yes.
we're excited to see you for episode 13.
If this conversation hit a little too close to home, that's probably not by accident. The messy middle is where most businesses actually live, right between where things started and where you thought you'd be by now. It's uncomfortable, it's uncertain, and it's easy to convince yourself you're doing something wrong. But you're not behind, you're in it. So instead of trying to rush past it, get honest about where you are. Look at your numbers. Understand what they're actually telling you. Because clarity, not avoidance, is what gets you through this phase. And if you're in that messy middle right now, don't stay there alone. Make sure you're following past the balance sheet so you don't miss what's next. Share this episode with somebody else who's in it too, because chances are they need to hear this just as much as you did. And if you're ready to stop guessing and start leading with clarity, you know where to find us. We'll see you next time, past the balance sheet.